really build your system now. Sure, times are tougher now, but don't allow yourself to lay it down when the market gets stronger or when things pick up or when you get busy or when anything else happens. What's happening, JC Agajanian here, broker associate with the Whissel Realty Group at eXp, and as usual, we are bringing you the recap, the cliff notes, if you will, of the Monday Morning Mastermind provided by the Fast Forward Network. So today we have three great topics that we dug into. The first one is surrounding goal setting, specifically in this market that is tougher than it has been recently, and for some, the toughest they've ever seen. The next topic we discussed is taking on an existing listing and making sure that you can convey that and turn it into many listings in the future. And the last one that we covered is on the subject of long-term nurture and conversion. What are the best strategies to make sure that we stay sticky with the people who are not ready to transact right now? So let's go ahead and get into it. The first topic that we discussed, as I mentioned, is surrounding goal setting and planning in this new different market. So the first piece of advice that we heard was to basically focus in on your needs and work from there on backwards instead of focusing so much on the market and what you think it will bear. Work backward. First of all, let's figure out your personal budget. What do you need to pay your mortgage or your rent, to pay your bills, to pay for your cars, to pay for your family? What is your personal budget? And then go ahead, add in your marketing budget and your professional budget. You've got expenses pertaining to the business. Add them all up and then go backwards from there. And that's going to really dictate the activities that you need to do, the things you need to do, the activities you need to make in order to meet your goals. So what are those goals? Well, basically, we're not just gonna have an annualized goal that feels more like a resolution than or a hope and a dream than an actual goal. So what we're going to do is we're going to get specific. We're going to get really specific. So first of all, you've got your annual goals, and then you're going to break them into quarterly goals. So you're going to have 4 big things that you want to do, and those are going to be pertaining to time. What do you want to do in the first quarter, the first 3 months of the year? What do you want to do in the second quarter, third, and fourth? Then break those down into monthly, weekly, and daily goals and get specific. Like I said, you want to have clarity on exactly what it's going to take to reverse engineer this income that you've already said, first of all, you have to have, and then hopefully you've added in what you would like to have in addition to that as part of this annual budget. So get specific, put it down on paper, get accountability, and this is the best way that you can really make goals in any market, especially a tougher market. You've got to have the big picture road mapped out. You've got to have the middle length, the quarterly goals, and what are those big things that you want to do each few quarters, and put them in priority. Which ones are going to come first, second, third, and fourth? And then you've got to figure out, how am I going to get this done? And it's going to break down to hourly blocks. I mean, it's just the way it's done, and it's hard to avoid, and it's really tough because now we're getting squirmy and uncomfortable because that means I've got to do specific things tomorrow in order to accomplish this goal for next year. It really drives it down to it. But if you can make it more fun than onerous, I guess, by really remembering what it is that you're going to be able to accomplish once you achieve these goals, and recruiting some help to keep you on track, so that if you do fall off track, it's from hours and days, and not from weeks and months that you've lost and not been en route to meet that goal. Speaking of goals, more important than goals in general is really creating new healthy habits inside your business that are going to help you lead to success, not just this year, but every year. And the thing about adding specific activities that you want to become habits is that you got to try and do them one at a time. There have been studies that have been done that say if you try and do even 2 instead of 1, let alone 3 or 4 or 5 or more, the likelihood of you achieving that and installing it in as a habit that you do on a regular basis just plummets. You've got to just do one at a time, make it happen until it's regular and it's not a very big deal and it's just something that you do, and then layer on new ones. That's the best way to add these healthy habits, is in layer fashion. And you can go and look at anybody that's got a big successful business or a huge team, and maybe get a behind the scenes tour, have someone let you in and look under the hood and tinker around a bit. It could be quite overwhelming to see all the different systems, tools, the people, everything that's going on inside someone's a really big operation. But you've got to know that didn't happen overnight. They didn't just say, we're going to install these 20 things that make for a booming business. It grew and grew and grew over time, and that's what you're going to do with your business as well. Finally, before we move on from the subject, you've got to know your numbers. You've got to know those key performance indicators. What are the things that are going to end up with a paycheck for you? And you've got to use them to drive your activities. And so here's the example. Let's say you're doing open houses, and that, every 35 or 50 or 75, depending on how great or, not great you are at conversion at open houses, you're going to get, X amount of leads. And out of those leads, one of them, so many of them are going to convert to clients, and then some of them are going to fall out, and one of them will be a deal, right? So if you know that for every 55 people you meet in an open house, you're going to get a paycheck. Well, what is your average paycheck? So let's say, it's $10,000 to $20,000, call it 15 grand. So you now know that for every open house, every group of open house guests that come through after multiple open houses, that you tally up to, say, 65, whatever your number is. And you've got to do the research to figure out, how many open houses have I closed and where do those come from? You got to reverse engineer this, but know your numbers, figure it out. And now you're going to know, okay, I need to just crank up the volume of these open houses till I can get to another 65, because I know that I'm going to have X amount of leads and X amount of conversion and X amount of closings because of that activity. So that's something that is now predictable based on your personal conversion skills that you can do. And so going back to knowing your numbers, this all you have to extrapolate from all this stuff, and you really got to rely on your past experience. And if you're newer in the business, reach out to someone who's maybe a little bit ahead of you, but similar in conversion skills and understanding of how to talk to people and get deals done, and use their numbers. But we've got to work from reality and not just a dream or something that sounds really good in our head, and figure out how to do that. The numbers are huge. So that is the do's and don'ts, the hot tips on goal setting and planning for the new year in this new, changing, and in some minds quite tougher market. All right, the next topic is how to really maximize your next listing and just turn it into many transactions, not just the one listing. Well, first of all, the idea behind this, many answers that you're going to hear on this topic, is to really build your system now. Sure, times are tougher now, but don't allow yourself to lay it down when the market gets stronger, or when things pick up, or when you get busy, or when anything else happens. The idea is to create solid systems that are going to kick out business and keep them in place. And maybe eventually you start to delegate responsibility on who's going to do what, but you don't let that tool that you've created, that system that's generating business for you, fall apart. So for some people in the mastermind that we're talking to, their strategy in this new market of taking listings and turning it into multiple transactions is no different than it was in the past, because they had systems and structure in place to follow through and make this happen. But if that's not you, no worries. No time like the present to start, so let's get it going, right? Side note, we should have a much bigger concept of what each listing represents. Kyle Whissel, who owns our company and is the founder of the Fast Forward movement, has done a whole podcast. I think it was a 30-minute or 60-minute podcast just on this topic of getting more out of each listing. And he says that you should have a goal of getting 5 transactions out of each and every listing. And you might be sitting there thinking, what the heck? How is this going to happen? Well, first of all, one transaction is selling the listing. That's what you're paid to do. That's what you're hired to do. So you should have that as first and foremost. Figure that out. And if you're having trouble doing that, all bets are off here. But let's get that done. Second attempt to get a second transaction out of this one instead of just the one is to go find your own buyer. Double end the listing. Do this with strong marketing efforts, working your sphere, working your database, all the leads that you've got in your system. See if you can find that buyer for your own listing. Whether before or after it goes on the market, try and match them up so that you're the one helping that seller and now the buyer as well. The third way that you can get another transaction out of a listing is to set up a buyer representation for that seller who's moving. They've got to go somewhere. And if they're leaving town, set up a referral fee. Sure, it's not a full transaction, but that's still money in the mail. It's going to be coming in a month or two. And the fourth way is to make the most of the opportunity by meeting the neighbors and connecting with one of them for a list or purchase, right? So get out there and meet the neighbors around this property that you're selling. And finally, you want to do such a good job for your seller that they're going to give you referrals of someone, maybe a friend or family that they know who is just over the moon with the service and with the results that you produce. So you're going to get more business from them. 5 different ways you can get new transactions out of one listing right there. That's a huge goal. And there's a lot of things that need to be done to capitalize on that, but it is a reality. Sure, you're maybe not going to get every single one of them every single time, but if you go into it with a much wider mindset to really influence what you can get out of that listing, you're going to be able to help more people and you're going to be able to do more business. You're going to be helping yourself as well. One great idea that I have literally forgotten about because it's been so many years since I was in this specific coaching program that preaches this, but one of the members said, hey, consider using signs that say open house every day. And it's not a writer on your for sale sign. It's not branded to you. This is a different sign, maybe on the separate side of the yard, that just says open house every day with a big fat phone number. And then below it just says call for schedule. And that's it. Maybe it's yellow and black, something kind of eye-catching, but not necessarily attractive, but just a non-branded open house every day will tend to produce a lot more sign calls than people picking up the phone and dialing the number on your sign or even going to the website that you have on your sign as well. So great idea that is not very expensive to implement or very labor intensive to implement in each one of your listings and should generate new sign calls for you. And, basically when they call you, treat it like a sign call. Sure, we have open houses every day. Wouldn't it be a great time to get over there? The objection of, I wanted to be in a regular open house with lots of strangers at one time, rarely, if ever, comes up. And you just explain that it's a service that you offer and you're happy to make that happen, available to them. So going back to one of the goals that Kyle mentioned, which is to sell or work with one of the neighbors of the listing. One of the neighbors open house is a huge tool, and I've been using this for years myself. But basically the idea is and this is a whole system, right? This is not just throwing an open house. There's door knocking, there's phone calls, there's invitations, there's lots that goes around this little piece of that 5 transaction goal that Kyle mentioned earlier. But the neighborhood open house is a great way to meet those neighbors. It's a great way also to get the looky-loos out of the way so that when you do the public open house, you can kind of compartmentalize in your mind, who am I talking to? Well, at the neighbors open, you're pretty much having seller conversations because these are neighbors who are just interested to see what Betty Sue and John had to do on the interior of their home while they lived there for the last 30 years, right? They're curious to see what's going on in there if they're not friends with them. But also these are seller conversations. Everyone's going to move eventually. So is that going to be soon? Is it not going to be soon? It depends on who you're talking to and what their plans are. So make it impressive. Door knock with quality, nice invitations, almost like you would invite someone to a birthday party or some other engagement. And like I said, door knock. Don't drop it or don't send it in the mail. Door knock and have conversations ahead of time with those people. So now you've made an introduction. They know who you are. You're the guy handling that listing down the road. Then they can come to the neighbors only, where you're going to have a nice spread. You're going to have maybe drinks, cocktails, food, appetizers, whatever it may be. We've done sushi and sake at our company. We've done beer and wings. We've done wine and cheese. Never anything over the top unless it's called for. Like the sushi and sake is a more expensive evening out, but usually that's for a higher end property, and usually going to be in one where you're already doing a lot of farming activity anyways, and you're really looking to impress. But in any case, you want to impress on some level so that the people in this neighborhood, if it's not your farm, that are just getting acquainted with you and your efforts, are going to be impressed with what you do, with all the hard work you're doing on the street, with the signs, the postcards that are going out, with everything that you're doing. They want to be, you want them to be impressed so that you can have a good chance of working with them in the near future, if not distant future, which comes back to long-term nurture and follow-up, which we'll be talking about next. A great tip on just the listing flyer alone was to rethink how you are presenting it and what information you're putting on that listing flyer. Are you designing your listing flyer for your seller, or are you designing it for buyers, or are you actually designing it for the sellers who live in that neighborhood and might be actually interviewing you without knowing it? It's weird to think about it that way, but it's important. So what you can do is, first of all, have some sort of unique selling proposition on the front side of the flyer. An example might be, buy this home and I'll buy yours, right? So that is something that's going to speak to both sellers and buyers, because you're looking for that trade-up opportunity. And if you don't have a trade-in program that you can use, send me a message. There's plenty of great ones out there that you can use so that that's not, a lie on the flyer. You can really make it a service that you offer that they're going to benefit from in the trade-in means. On the back, it should be covered with different things that you do that the other people don't. So if you've got statistics like homes sold in the area under a certain time or whatever it is, there should just be a whole, basically like a one-page advertisement in a newspaper, except it's the back of your listing flyer. This was something I've never really thought of before, and I'm definitely going to go ahead and implement on my very next listing. I love the idea of speaking to sellers on my listing flyers instead of buyers, and really trying to solicit more business out of the people that live nearby. So make the entire back of your flyer a promo about how great you are at selling your homes. So that's the second topic. We're going to move on to long-term nurture and conversion strategies next. So this one is age old. It's never going to go away, because as I always say to my clients and sometimes to coworkers, selling and buying homes is a process. It's not an event, and therefore the fortune is in the follow-up, and we need to do it well. So the lead source is important. It kind of depends on what your best strategy is going to be, depending on where that lead came from. But the phone call is tried and true. You know, some people in this day and age don't like picking up the phone, and you're never going to catch them. That's not everybody. It's largely extremely young people. Without question, Gen Z, who are not really buying homes yet, but the millennials are also a little inclined to not answer their phone so much, but they do answer their phone. They do have conversations. We just need to know how to catch them and what to say. And we also need to use the phone call as one of, not our only way of following up. But as far as phone calls go, you should always keep it no longer than 90 days apart. Even if they tell you, I'm not selling for 6 months, I'm not selling for, a year. Hey, stay in touch with them and don't let them get away from you, because as a great line to be used as part of a script goes, hey, when things change, they change quickly, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing my job and staying in touch with you and making sure I'm aware of your plans as it regards to a potential real estate sale or move in your future. So it's a disarming opening. Hey, I know you told me it's going to be 6 months out, but it's been 2, or it's been 1, whatever the case is, however strongly you feel that they need to be followed up with. But do not ever hear, hey, 6 months, okay, cool, and then make a note for 6 months to call them back. It's too late. It's too long. In the past, I've heard cut it in half. But nowadays I'm thinking even that may be too long. So they tell you 6 months, give them a call in a month or two. Stay in touch, be disarming, be charming, be kind, but be there and have a conversation with them on a regular basis. Okay. There's also great tools that you can use. There's long-term text templates that will do things automatically. There's long-term email templates. You can get artificial intelligence to carry on text message conversations with you the way we do at our company. There's lots of things you can do for long-term nurture. But one thing that we ought to do, and this is another kind of a mindset change, there's lots of different ways of thinking about things introduced in today's mastermind, is to kind of look at a lead and ask yourself, what can I do to help this person get to the next step? Because we know it's a process, like we said. We know everything doesn't happen all at once. But how can we move them to the next phase, whatever that next phase may be? If it's just the first phone call, how can we move them to an appointment? If it's just an appointment, how can we move them to a lender conversation? Whatever happens next, we need to keep them moving there. And then pitch what's next. Hey, what usually happens next is this, and let's pick a time to do it. So you want to also think about various programs that you can offer them that are unique and clearly articulate it and send it out with all channels, on the phone, via email, on your socials, via text message. Get that message out. And a great one that you can offer, and most people have some way of getting these, is to make sure you've got an off-market property tool that you can say, hey, I've got probably a couple hundred properties that are not on the market. I'd be happy to share them with you, but they're really something that we just have to reserve for our clients. Would you like to have a conversation sometime about what it would look like to work together, and so I can make that available to you? Off-market properties are a great hook and a tool, and it's something that you actually can offer. We can talk about that more offline if you'd like to ask me questions about it. Another idea is to do a better job at sharing your success stories and your social proof. And what I mean better, I'm talking about, hopefully you're already asking people that have worked with you for reviews, and hopefully you're sharing those online or in newsletters, however you want to do that. But wouldn't it be better to tell a story about clients that are similar to a certain group? Maybe it's first timers, or maybe it's move uppers, or whatever it is, and say, you know what? When I met John and Sally, they were in this position and they were unsure. They had some concerns and even some fears, and we got together and we had this, and tell the whole story of this success that you had with people that are just like you in the same position you are now. And here's what we did. And look, this just happened recently, or this was, whatever the case may be. You want to make it really relatable, and then you send it to them directly. That's huge, and I think it will really help those long-term nurtures come to fruition for you. Going back to what I was saying about moving them to the next step, the idea of being a little more direct, a little more forward, without being pushy, without being salesy, but just clearly communicating, hey, usually this is what the next step is. I'd be happy to do that for you. In fact, I've got a couple times this week, maybe, Thursday at 4 or Friday at 10. Pick some times that work for you, and then say, so which one's best. The old A/B option, right, is going to always help people get to a yes easier than just throwing at them and saying, oh, what time works best for you? Because people are busy and they don't know what time is going to work best for them. They don't even know if they want to do this in the first place. They probably do, but there's also hesitations. They don't need to think about that. Just throw some options. They'll think through their mind, do I have a conflict now? Instead of, out of all my calendar, what will work? So you give them a couple ideas in their mind. Are there any conflicts? Or look at the calendar. Are there any conflicts? No? Okay, I can do that. Cool. Much easier, yes. And you're moving along. So be direct. Be bold. Don't be afraid to speak plainly and clearly and keep things moving forward. You can do it nicely and you can do it kindly. And another idea that just kind of was out of left field a little bit, but the concept of using maybe messaging on your website or on social media or through a blast through your database, but offer a rebate for people that have higher than 750 credit scores. I mean, wouldn't you like to work with buyers who have great credit all the time instead of people who maybe have some challenges? Usually people with great credit are more responsible. They're a little more organized, and things are going to go more smoothly with someone with good credit as opposed to poor credit. In addition, a lot of times those price points are higher as well. So maybe throw out a rebate of some monetary value and just say, I just wanted to take care of all my folks who are doing a really good job taking care of themselves and keeping those credits high. We're going to give this back to you, and then keep it moving. That's all I got for today. I hope that this was helpful, that there were some things that made you scratch your head a little bit and say, gosh, maybe I should be doing that myself. And as usual, if you'd like to join the mastermind yourself, feel free to shoot me a DM. And if you've got any questions or feel like some offline conversation would be appropriate, just reach out. Love to talk to you soon. Take it easy.